Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont, and in this video we're looking at simple question: which Souls game has the best hub? And by Souls game I am talking of the FromSoft titles Demon's Souls, the Dark Souls trilogy, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring primarily. But if you want to bring up the Hotel from Lies of P, or some other games' hubs, then by all means feel free to give them a shout out in the comments. I'm going to rank them in this video, but keep in mind that, well, A, that's my opinion, and B, I don't hate any of them, I just like some of them more than others. With that said, why don't we get right to it? Roundtable Hold, the most recent one, and my least favourite. I don't dislike the Roundtable Hold. It's cool finding it in the game at the end, the real version so to speak, but a trend I found from making this video is that I prefer the more relaxed, bright hubs, and also the spacious ones. Roundtable Hold feels claustrophobic, dark and dingy. I can't even think how the music goes off the top of my head, which is alarming, given I've got hundreds and hundreds of hours in Elden Ring. There is music in the Roundtable Hold, right? I just honestly can't remember it. I think an important part of the hub is how it connects to the world, along with the characters within. Roundtable Hold feels very disconnected from the world, partially because it doesn't seem to exist in the same space, of course. Now, I remember when I was playing Elden Ring the first time, I was wondering, where is the Hold? My guess throughout most of the game was it was inside the Erd tree, and once we started to burn the tree I was like, oh man, are the windows and walls gonna burn down and we're gonna see the tree? And then once I noticed Majula up there in the distance, I was like, oh, maybe it's floating in the air. But then I got to Majula and I was like, oh, it's just its own thing. At any rate, the Roundtable Hold's not a bad hub, but it's my least favourite of them all. Firelink Shrine, Dark Souls 3. Firelink Shrine version 2 has one of my favourite tracks in the whole franchise, the Secret Betrayal version that plays if you make certain decisions in the story of Dark Souls 3. In general, I'm not a huge fan of this hub though. I had a hard time deciding between this and Roundtable for the bottom spot, so to speak, but I think at the end of the day, Firelink version 2 feels a little more connected to the world and I prefer the layout. I like how the thrones all look down on the central bonfire and how it's laid out. The reason I dislike it, the reason I don't enjoy it more, is because it just doesn't feel all that original. Dark Souls 3 recycles a lot of things, and in some ways even the design of the shrine feels like a knockoff of the Nexus from Demon's Souls, and of course it's called Firelink Shrine. But it has none of the grandeur of the Nexus. It's also dark and dingy, and it's not much of a respite. What was it that Egon called it? A cesspit of doddering old folk and degenerates? Yeah, he's not wrong. But I do find it cool that you can turn Arena into a Firekeeper. That's one of the most pointless yet cool little things you can do in Dark Souls 3. And of course the Firekeeper herself is a cute little lady. Roundtable is lacking her in her reactions to gestures. Speaking of reacting to gestures though, Hunter's Dream. It's one area that I expect will rank much higher for many people. I think this will be a favourite for a lot of you. And I get it. The doll is uniquely interesting, the layout and the theme of the area is cool. Why don't I rate it higher? First up, it isn't connected, and as you've probably figured out by now, that's a big thing for me. That, and it feels a bit cramped. All the paths through it are cramped and narrow, and the only spot of respite really is that tiny little shack and workshop. In general, this dream, whilst uniquely designed, just doesn't feel much of a place to await and prepare for the next battle. It almost just feels like a loading screen in some ways. And I guess reaching it always felt like a bit of a nuisance in Bloodborne, because you have to like load there, then load back and all that stuff. But the doll is certainly up there in terms of characters. Now granted, Hunter's Dream also has the least amount of any NPCs in any Souls hub, if I'm not mistaken. We only meet 2 NPCs there, unless I'm forgetting someone. It's been quite a long time since I've played Bloodborne, because, you know, Sony refused to give us a PC port, and I don't know if I could stomach playing it on my PS4 again these days. Maybe the isolation is part of it for some people, but for me, I don't know, it just feels a bit too small and out of the way. The Nexus. The original and one of the best. The Nexus is a great hub. Whilst it isn't physically connected to the rest of the game, you have the archstones which give enough of a feeling of being linked. You also have a lot of memorable NPCs, a call out, and just the building itself is interesting. It's dark, but it does feel like a place to recover and plan out your next move. And at the end, we have that dramatic move to the Old One's chambers, as if the whole Nexus were just there solely to imprison the Old One. I like the idea of these grand structures that have a very singular purpose, but then serve as a sort of makeshift living space. In some ways, and this might sound weird, but in some ways it does remind me of spaceships in Warhammer 40k, the sort of cathedral ships. But the way the NPCs are scattered about makes it feel very real and a lived-in space, and I can picture the whole area so clearly in my mind, despite Demon's Souls being the game I've played the least out of all of these. Firelink Shrine version 1. This area has everything. A great assortment of characters who come and go, a central bonfire that provides comfort, plenty of space, enough verticality, a bright, open area that's also connected to the rest of the world and allows you to see and plan out where you might want to tackle next. On top of that, the music is perfect. Dark Souls uses music sparingly, and having the slow, calming yet mystical tones of Firelink what adds to the atmosphere. And then we have that big old raven, several secrets about the place. Physically it's connected to, New Londo, the catacombs, and the Undead Burg, I think. And I guess the Undead Parish, if we count that as its own area. Is there anywhere else it's connected to? But you can see a lot of other areas from there as well. It just feels like a nice central location. If you're making a video game with an open world and a hub, I think Firelink Shrine is a great study for why it's so effective in its placement, its atmosphere, just everything about it. I would go so far as to say it's perfect as a hub, with one small exception, that cursed well. Majula. The most controversial opinion, perhaps, and you probably saw this coming when I didn't mention it earlier, but Majula is either going to be your favourite area or your least favourite area, from what I've seen of people saying online. It's a Marmite situation, love it or hate it. For me, I love the sunset, and there's some debate over whether it's a sunrise or a sunset. I seem to recall a developer saying in an interview that it's a sunset, and I think a sunset is more thematically appropriate, but it doesn't really matter too much. I love the music, Emerald Herald is best girl. I love the layout, so spacious and yet with the feeling of isolation, even with a good number of NPCs there, all keeping to themselves. I love how you can see so much of the world from there. Now the scale's a bit iffy at times when you look at how close and far things like Drangleic Castle and the Tower of Flame and so on are, but you can see the Huntsman's Copse, Forest of Fallen Giants, and so on and so forth. Dark Souls 2 is a troubled game in a lot of ways, but Majula is fantastic. If I had some suggestions though, for Majula V2, I'd love to see it change a bit more as the game went on. This is true for all the hubs, they never really change much, but I like the idea of them gradually changing slightly over the course of the adventure. To think about it in another context though, if the Souls games were like, I don't know, an MMO or Destiny where players were in the hubs together at the same time, which do you think would work best just to hang out with other players in? That's another reason Majula's the best for me. And you might argue, oh, that goes against everything Soulsy, you know, multiple people, blah blah blah. Yeah, I'm not saying we need like a Souls MMO or anything like that, but I'm always thinking of that one artwork and the kind of like an early trailer, I think, for Dark Souls 1, which shows a bunch of characters around the bonfire before one of them walks off. That image has always been quite striking and stuck with me. These hubs as a nexus point for adventurers and knights to sit around, share a story, a brief moment of calm, before heading off into the darkness once more, possibly to never be seen again. Which goes hand in hand with Miyazaki's original design tenets for the game, or some of them at least. He's been on record saying he wanted to invoke that very atmosphere of telling stories around a fire.